Welcome to Think Like a Dog podcast, where we explore dog behavior and psychology-based training to help your dog achieve their full potential. Welcome back to Think Like a Dog podcast. Thank you so much for joining us again. And today we have a new guest with us, Molly, and we're very excited about it.
Yeah, Molly and I have been following each other for a little while on Instagram. I'm obsessed with her. I might be Molly's biggest fan. You can find her on Pete's Adventure Pack on Instagram. And I'm assuming other socials as well, or just Instagram?
Just Instagram for now.
Okay. Do you want to tell
simplifying my life?
I get it. Do you want to explain a little bit about what you do, where you're located, what services you offer, things like that?
Yeah. So I am a trainer based out of Utah. I'm currently based in Park City, but I have clients kind of in the surrounding area. And I focus on not only kind of the same stuff that Millie and the Mirror Image Canine team do from a behavior standpoint, but I also, my true passion is teaching people how to adventure safely outdoors with their dogs. So everything from biking, skiing, hiking, horseback riding, camping. And for a while, I think I felt like I had to do all the behavior stuff and okay, this is what I do as a trainer, which I still do a lot of that. But then once I kind of found this niche, I was like, wait, this is what I'm passionate about. This is what I love to coach people on. So now I have a lot of clients who come to me that say hey, I have a reactive dog, but I want to eventually get to the point where I can bike off leash or I can ski or do those things. So kind of working through the behavior stuff all the way to the really fun, cool fulfillment stuff.
Yeah, it's like a finished product almost. It's almost like you work through the reactivity and then you're like, but look what else you can do with your dog, right? It's not just you can live a safe life with your dog, you can live a fun life with your dog. Yeah. That's so cool. I'm so jealous of what you do on a day-to-day basis. But I mean, a lot of what you focus on is fulfillment. So I think that that's kind of what we're going to talk a lot about today. And just, what an average dog owner's idea of fulfillment is, and then what we think of it as dog trainers. And I think that that's a lot of times two really big opposite things, what a dog owner thinks is affection or fulfillment to their dog versus what we think. I think there's a lot of room in between those two ideas. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think a lot of the times people will get a dog being okay, I want a dog to snuggle with me on the couch at night. I want a dog who will just kind of chill, whenever I want to chill. And maybe they ended up with a husky or a herding dog. And
you're incredible with your huskies. You kind of blow my mind with those huskies a little bit.
Thank you. Well, it just, so it is a perfect example in a way because if you're going to get a husky, I feel like you have to understand who they are as a dog, right? And so my husband was actually the reason why we got huskies, and he is a husky. Our lifestyle is skiing, biking, hiking. We wake up every morning, we exercise ourselves and the dogs, and then literally our huskies sleep the rest of the day.
Yeah.
That's pretty much their routine. But they fit our natural lifestyle. So we didn't take a dog that, was outside of what our normal life was and try to make them into something that they're not. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest difference is finding a dog that already fits your natural lifestyle that you have. And there are chill dogs that exist, and there are chill huskies too, by the way. I've fostered a handful of them that are cool with a slow chill hike or walk around the neighborhood, and they're thanks, I'm done. But I can count them on one hand.
I think that's, a lot of people go out and they get a breed that they think is just a good looking dog, or they saw in a movie or whatever. But they don't recognize sort of what that breed was bred to do and what it's going to take, not just to, the way that I think a lot of people go into it is they're okay, well, I need to do this, this, and this in order to live with this dog happily, right? But they're looking at that happily from their perspective, not from the dog's perspective. What I need to do these things and exercise the dog this amount in order to not be annoyed by this dog, right? Mm-hmm. Not necessarily I need to do these things in order to give this dog the quality of life that it deserves based on the breed, based on its energy level, its specific personality. I think, is that Louie?
That's my dog. Sorry, guys. Of course, that's the non-dog trainer's dog that is barking like that.
It's fine. You could have said it was a foster. You could have just lied. So at least you were honest.
Well,
But yeah, I
Molly,
think,
yeah,
go ahead.
go ahead.
No,
Okay.
no, we'll cut this part out. Go ahead. We'll cut out Louie. We'll cut out the whole thing.
No, I just wanted to, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Millie. I
I
thought we
didn't
were
have
going to
anything actual to
start.
say.
Okay, sounds good. Well, Molly, how did you get in the industry? How did you get started? Like, let's talk about where it all started.
Yeah. So I actually got into dog training through the rescue world. But before that, which I think is worth noting, my mom is like freaking Snow White and would like save baby squirrels and birds. And like, just,
Oh.
we had a lot of animals growing up that were all rescues. And most of them were like like all of our cats came from like a pine straw truck that was like overheating. Like, my mom is just kind of an amazing human. So I think my love for animals, dogs, cats, horses, everything came from her and was just like naturally kind of born into me. But then in college, I found my dog Pete, who I named my business after, or he kind of like showed up at the barn. Dogs just like gravitate towards horse barns, by the way. They're like, these are the animal people that are going to take us home. So he was a stray, bad shape, terrified, all the things. And he would lay by my horse's tack trunk, like by my horse's stall. And so I was like, okay, all right, let's just hang out. And eventually he started following me around the barn and found out like no microchip, no person, tried to find him, called all the shelters, vets, everything. Nobody showed up for him. So I ended up adopting him a few months later. And with that kind of started me getting into volunteering at shelters. And I just noticed that there were a ton of dogs in there that were solid, super great, just like happy go lucky dogs that just needed a little bit of training and would have been fine. You know, like got surrendered because they jumped on the counter or would dig holes in the backyard or whatever it was, right? And so I actually found a dog that was on the youth list. This was in Alabama, by the way. Found a dog that was on the youth list that was like this perfect happy go lucky lab mix. And I contacted a rescue and just said, hey, I know you do foster programs, but if you pull this dog for me, can I foster? I was like 18, by the way. I was in college. So like the fact that this rescue even said yes to me is like kind of mind blowing.
Yeah.
But I have them to thank for like all of this, because then that got me on this like training kick. And I just started learning from everybody around me who was working with dogs. Obviously learned a lot of things that I didn't want to do, things that I do want to do, and then just kind of like self-education. And then I started working with more rescues, more seriously training foster homes and the adopters and just kind of like helping out. Like I didn't call myself a trainer, right? But then it kind of hit me in like 2016, I guess. And I was doing marketing stuff, but I was like, why am I not doing more actual dog training? And so I started shadowing other trainers. And then eventually in 2020 and then 2021, I opened my business and went full time. So I've only had my full business for a couple of years now, but I've been working with dogs for a while. But that's kind of how I got into it, was through fostering and rescue stuff.
That's crazy. You're like on the same project. Like I have this around 2021 is when I started Mirror Image. I was working in animal hospitals before that, but it's crazy that like once you commit, what can happen, once you commit to something that you really care about and you're willing to do the work, really what can happen. That's crazy. I didn't know that it was so recent.
Yeah. I mean, and it feels like I've been like working with dogs for a while, but I was like, holy crap, that was only 2 years ago.
Yeah. COVID, I think, helped a lot of people that wanted this as a career to make this a career, because everyone went out and got dogs and then needed to train them. So I think that that's the reason that I was able to start my business, is because, I mean, COVID hit and everybody needed help with their dog at their house because they didn't realize how hard it was to live with their dog 24/7.
Right. Yeah. And I think it also gave me more, like I was still working my job, but like it gave me more time at home with some of the foster dogs or clients that I did have that were part-time. And I was like, wait a minute, like I can do this.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's how
That's
it happened.
awesome. I love how your story started with rescue. That's something I'm very passionate about. And when I met Millie, we started to work together. And shortly after that, we started our rescue program, the Best Chance program. And that's our focus, is to work with dogs and get them, get to know their personalities, figure out how to help them, and give the family support the entire time, just so that we can make sure it's a right fit for everybody. And the dog becomes the dog they can be, a confident, balanced dog. That's our goal with the program. So I love that you started it with rescue. That's so awesome.
Yeah, I saw your program obviously through Millie, and I was like, yes, like this is exactly what rescue should be doing. And I wish I was like obviously closer to like foster for you guys. That would be a dream.
You're actually down here a lot though, because you're from here.
Yeah, so I come back for family stuff.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's weird. She went to high school with a couple people that I knew, and I didn't know that until I heard Sherry talking about you at a workshop. It's just such a small world. It's such a small world.
That's crazy.
But yeah, no, I mean, the Best Chance program started, I think probably within the same month we had the idea of the podcast and the Best Chance program. So the fact that you bought a mic for this, we get it, because we went full force into this. We were like, let's do a podcast and let's also start an entire rescue program. And I had just opened the center like 6 months before that. So
I couldn't let you all down. I was like, they're 100% people, and I am too. So we can't half-ass this thing.
No. There was no way you were going to let any of us down. There's no way.
I love it.
And I do still foster through Poso Dog Rescue, who's out of Boulder, Colorado, and they have a training-based program too. They're phenomenal. Cool. And then foster for Sherry for a second chance at love.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
It took working with a lot of rescues to find the gems, but
because there's a lot of rescues out there that they just care about making sure that the dog is going to get into a home. Right. They don't necessarily care that it's the right home. They don't necessarily care that the transition goes well, even, right? But I think, there are some rescues out there. That's what I kind of posted the other day with Ozzy and Andreia and the Ozzy Albies Foundation. Not only do they care about the mental health of the dog, the physical well-being of the dog, but they care so much that like they're paying for chiropractic services for their foster dogs. Like dogs that aren't necessarily even having big issues, but just like prevention. And that's, I get it. Rescues are, especially in the South, I mean, we're overrun, right? So not every rescue can do that. But I think, the fact that we are a smaller rescue and we do have to turn away a lot of dogs, like a lot of people who come to us and say, I just want to rehome my personal dog. We have to turn away a lot of those dogs because we do go full-fledged 100%, right? We're 100% people for the dogs that we do have. So we're not going to take another one on that we don't have the ability and the bandwidth to be able to give them everything that they need from start to finish, even after they're in a home. Right. But it doesn't mean that other rescues aren't helping in every way that they can. It's just different.
Yeah, it's totally different. But I love what you all are doing. So keep it up.
Well, let's talk about some of the things that you're passionate about and the topics that you really go into, especially on your training. And one of those things is fulfillment for the dog. So to start off talking about fulfillment, can you tell us what are some of the common misconceptions around fulfillment when you're working with clients, when you talk to them about fulfillment for your dogs, like you were just talking about your huskies and getting them fulfilled and understanding what it takes to fulfill those needs that they have as a husky. So what are some of those misconceptions that you typically hear around fulfillment?
Yeah. So I think first, like the definition of fulfillment in general is important because it can be different based on what trainer you talk to. So I look at fulfillment as like the overall needs of the dog. So not only physical exercise, but mental exercise too, because German Shepherds and Huskies are very different in that category. We can get into that later. Mm-hmm. But then also like, who is your dog, and understanding your dog's pack position and their confidence level, and what do they need from you as their human and their partner. And so there's a lot that I think goes into fulfillment. I think one of the misconceptions is when I ask people, and I always do this because I'm like pretty strict on it. I'm like, okay, what do you do to physically exercise your dog? Like, what are you doing to fulfill them? And they're like, oh, well, they run around the backyard and chase squirrels, and then we cuddle. And so I think not that that's wrong. However, for physical exercise for dogs, I fully believe that it needs to be structured exercise where they're having to mentally think about what they're doing. And like, if you watch a dog who goes running and is just zooming up and down the trail, as an example, versus a dog who's trail running with you at your side or even walking at your side, that dog who's having to think about what they're doing and mentally focus and mentally exercise is going to come back so much more tired and fulfilled than the dog who's adrenalized and running up and down the trail chaotically, right? So I think the misconception is that part of it is like cuddles are fulfillment. And then part of it is, well, my dog ran around a bunch, so they exercised. So those are kind of the two biggest things that I see versus like looking at what the dog's actual needs are, looking at the breed and looking at just dogs in general versus what we as humans think they need.
Yeah, I think a big thing for you is like tired doesn't equal fulfilled for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, yeah, they're going to come back tired and they're going to come back fulfilled, but just because they come back tired does not mean that you have fulfilled them.
Right.
And I think that that's like the key for a lot of people who think, okay, well, my dog did run around outside. They're tired now. I'm able to live with them. They're not barking in my house or not, inconveniencing me. So now I can cuddle with them on the couch because they did their thing. Now I get to do my thing. But the way that you look at it is so much more about the dog. And I love that. I love that. I think, I was really excited this morning because I had a video consult with a client who listens to the podcast, and we talked a lot about fulfillment. And I told her, I was like, well, Molly's coming on the podcast later today. You'll have to catch this podcast episode, but she was talking about fulfillment in a way that it was almost like she was pouring everything into her dog. Like if her dog came and looked at her, she'd be like, okay, well, what are we doing now? Do we need to do some scent work? Do we need to do a puzzle? Do we need to do this? Like, what is it that we need? And I think there is this side of fulfillment where people are so willing to do the thing that they don't know when to be like, okay, I did it. Now rest. Like there is a side of fulfillment that at the end of the day, there does need to be an off switch. So I think that there are people who just don't get fulfillment. There are people like don't get what it means to the dog or for a dog. I think that there are people who maybe do understand it, but aren't willing to do it. And they're just in the situation that they just can't for whatever reason or won't for whatever reason. But then I think that there's other people, and I'm lucky I feel lucky to know these people because all it is switching, right? There's people who are like, I want to do it. I'm ready to do it. I have all the time in the world to do it. I just don't know when to stop or how to do it in a healthy way. So kind of what you said of like structured exercises or like this mental, sort of the mental work. I feel like people think, okay, a puzzle, that's mental stimulation for a dog. But what we think of as mental stimulation is calmly following us on a trail, right? Those two things are so different, I think, in an owner's mind and a dog trainer's mind of like what mental stimulation is for, or at least a healthy version of mental stimulation and when to stop. Do you get a lot of those people of like, okay, now stop?
Yes. So, and I actually recently posted something about huskies where I was like, if you don't fulfill them, they're going to take themselves on their own adventure. And I had a lot of people comment saying, well, I took my husky on a 14-mile camping trip, backpacking trip, and they still ran away later. And my answer to that is like exactly what you said. You have to have an off switch and structure too, right? So, like, I'll just use mine as the example. So, wake up in the morning, go for a bike ride, ski, hike, whatever the season is. And then even my 10-year-old husky comes home and gets a nap in the crate for like a couple hours, and then they get fed. And like that shut off is so important. And a lot of dogs don't ever learn to shut off, especially like I think you've talked about this before, where like when people get puppies, they're like, okay, well, what do I do with my puppy now? And they're constantly doing stuff with their puppy. And so their puppy never learns to like just relax. And so like we have to like, whenever I'm working with the dog, I'm like, okay, we work, now we crate. We work, we crate. Like we're just creating that off switch.
Because you can create an adrenaline junkie, especially with like the huskies, right? Like they're not gonna stop until they fall down, right? And it's going to be really, really hard to get them to fall down, right? Like you're gonna fall down way before they do.
Totally.
So it's almost like you can create a dog who can take more and more and more and more, and then expects more and more and more. So I think there is a huge side of fulfillment of, yeah, you got to do the work. You got to put it in and see your dog for who they are and what they like. And then I've been encouraging a lot of my clients get really critical, like in a healthy way of what exercise that you're doing with your dog. Get like truly critical of, is this involving too much excitement? What patterns am I setting here, right? Is this truly fulfillment, or am I doing this because it is the easy route? And every once in a while that's fine. But there needs to be this end to it. Because if without the end, you're going to be in almost a worse position than if you had never started, because now your dog is expecting to just constantly go all the time. But that's like, I feel like the biggest thing that I see of people, because I feel like I get two spectrums. I get people who are like, okay, fix my dog, please, and do it for me. I want this magic trick, kind of. And then those people are fine, because once you convince them, hey, it's actually not a magic trick, we've got to do this, this, and this, then they get to agree or disagree and walk away, which is fine. Doesn't hurt my feelings. But then I got the other people who are like, almost kind of like Andreia, right? Because that's how this whole thing started, is that she was like, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? Now what? And I'm like, now just crate them. But luckily Andreia was really already good with the crate. She already had impact crates. She was already like, at least with the big dogs. The little dogs took a lot of convincing, but we're almost there. But it's almost like you're doing it, but now enjoy it. Enjoy the calm. I feel like people don't necessarily know how to enjoy the calm, and they're waiting for their dog to just be calm rather than teaching that. I feel like that's almost the biggest thing I see with fulfillment is like, okay, now crate your dog. Now it's over, and it's okay to say no.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that, especially in the previous episodes, where when you go through a session, when you teach them something new, when you go through a structured walk or exercise, crating is so important to allow them to process too. It's not even just rest, it's they're processing all that information, everything that they just learned, or, all the calmness they just practice, all of those things. So, the main thing that we talk to our fosters about is the crate, because we want to ensure that they are ready to take on that responsibility to crate the dog during the day, to allow them to process after training sessions if they're working through structure. And even our adopters as well, we talk to them so much about that. And in that initial call, they're all kind of just listening in, like, why are you mentioning the crate so much? Why? I mean, okay, the crate. I never crated my dog. I was like, well, you're going to learn why we do it, because it's such an important component, because you don't want to just fulfill them. You don't want to just practice calm. You don't want to just do the structure. You want to add that piece of the puzzle, which is the crate, which allows them to just process everything. So that's been, a big thing that we've been discussing lately, is just allowing your dog to process the information that you teach them. But once we go into affection as well, which is also another thing that your dog has to process, and we were talking about that in the beginning of the episode, affection to your dog versus affection to the human is so different, right? And we see videos all the time on Instagram, trainers showing these accidents that happen because the human is giving affection, and then all of a sudden the dog reacts and the person doesn't understand why. It looks like it's out of the blue, it just happened. And it happens to, yesterday I was talking to someone and they said the same thing. We adopted a dog, we had him for 6 months, and then out of nowhere the dog bit my wife. And then we talked a little bit more, and he said, well, my wife was on the floor and she was petting the dog, and then he just bit her face. And I was like, man, okay, well, because we talk so much about this and about affection, Millie always says, you have to give affection with a purpose. Like, you have to give, intentional affection, not just sitting there and petting the dog and you're not paying attention to that interaction. You're not looking for signs. You're not understanding the body language. So for this person, it sounded like out of nowhere. Then as we talked a little bit more, she ended up being on the floor petting him, watching TV. So then it seems like, okay, maybe it wasn't, but it's so interesting to talk about affection to your dog versus affection to a human, because we get lots of stories behind that where people don't really understand affection for the dog and what that means. Can you go more into that when you start talking about affection with your clients and, people that just overcompensate with affection, they're always showing affection, and what it means, affection to the dog. What does that actually mean to them?
So when I think about affection really is anything that the dog likes in that moment. So like affection isn't just pets. Affection is spending quality time with your dog. And I kind of always say, like, what's your dog's love language? Because some dogs, like, especially if they're really shut down and a super nervous dog, like, they might not want pets at all. They might just want your guidance. They might
affection in that moment could be not petting them.
Totally.
Yeah.
Like affection can just be silence and calmness and your calm energy and your presence and like guiding them through something. Like, and affection can also be, when talking about fulfillment, like affection is also me going on a bike ride with my dogs. And yes, then affection when it comes to touch should be very intentional. It should also be mutual. I always tell people that when they're trying to pet their dog and their dog's like looking the other direction, I'm like, that's like trying to make out with somebody who doesn't want to make out with you. That's just weird. Don't do that. Like that dog doesn't want that in that moment. Like make sure that it's a conversation that you're having through touch. So like when the dog recalls to you, like I'll do like really slow chest rubs, or like Brooks, my shepherd, loves jaw massages. Like find what your dog likes for touch, but also when do they like it? And it should be a mutual conversation. It shouldn't just be a one-way thing, like in the situation you were just talking about.
Yeah. And liking, I think too, for people, they see, okay, well, my dog likes it because they jump all over me. My dog likes it because they bark at me. So they want my affection. Sort of what you said. I mean, it should be mutual. So it shouldn't be like, hey, lady, pet me. It shouldn't be like finding what your dog likes doesn't necessarily mean it induces excitement. Sometimes it means, most of the time, ideally, it means that it actually creates calm. Like you should see your dog almost like melting in your hands when you are like, when you're petting them. That's really what you can teach your dog, that a human touch equals calm, right? Like that's the association that you can build. But most of the time we are the reason that the dog expects excitement from the human. But I think, there should be more qualifications for, okay, my dog likes this because they get excited about it. Great. But is it healthy in that moment? Were you intending to touch them? I see a lot of people just empty petting, right? Empty calories. Like you just go and have a giant soda, and then you're still not filled, you're not filled up, right? But you just had a lot of calories. And that's where they don't even recognize that they're petting the dog when the dog is jumping on them. They don't even recognize that they're petting the dog when the dog is trying to eat me. I used to get that a lot when I was a vet tech. People would be like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And the dog is lunging at me. And I'm like, do I get a say in this? Because I feel like it's not okay what your dog is doing. Your dog's trying to eat me. But I think affection needs to be a two-way street, and there needs to be a conversation. I see that a lot of times with not only just bites in general, but bites with kids, is that there's no wiggle room. There's no, like the kids are just swarming the dog, and they're giving affection. And the intention, of course, from a kid is, I like this dog and I want to pet them. But there's no give and take. There's no wiggle room. Like I do a 10-second petting rule with kids of, you can have your hands on the dog for 10 seconds, sometimes less. And then you put your hands away, you put them back in your pockets or in your lap. If the dog stays there, then you can put your hands back on there again and count to 10. The dog moves away, we get to let them move away. So it's a matter of making sure like you're not trying to make out with somebody who actually is looking at a girl over there, right? Just trying to get out of the situation, or like, oh, actually I have an emergency at home, I need to go. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a lot of times what we think of from affection, but we don't think of it as trail running, as for Kemper, he's pit hound. I mean, he's got everything in him, but the dog loves tug. He loves tug. So that's our affection. That's our game that we play together. But then it's 15 minutes of affection and then I turn off. Then you go in your crate, you think about it. And during tug, it's not just this free for all. There's rules. I start it. I ask you to back off. Sometimes you win, sometimes I win, but you still can't bite me. You still can't jump on me. But that's affection for him. It's not just petting. And some dogs it might be, but it's about when it happens and how it happens.
Totally. Yeah. And I think kind of going back to what we were saying earlier too, like really understanding who your dog is, because like, so I have 6 dogs, and they're all very different, which is cool.
I have
But
6 dogs too. So hey.
yeah, I was like, I feel like we're kindred spirits over here.
Catch up, Millie.
Not doing my part. Not doing my part.
Come on now. No, five actually felt like a good number, and then we adopted Hank actually from Sherry, and I love him to death. But I'm like, yeah, 5 felt pretty good. And Hank's also the youngest and wild man, so like he's my current major work in progress. But yeah, with all of my dogs, like we have a hound Aussie mix, and he's much more. He somehow got the like lazy, the small percentage of lazy hound stereotype.
Oh, you got lucky.
Like, so lucky. He's the easiest dog I've ever had. And I had him as a puppy, but he literally is fine with like a chill walk. He'll go trail riding with me with the horses, and then he sleeps for like 3 days. And he does, like, he would legitimately be fine snuggling on the couch and going on a hike every 3 days. And he'd be fine with that. Yeah. But like the Huskies would literally be destroying the house or running away. They're just all very different. So you just have to understand who your dog is and fulfill that specific dog, not what you think that your dog should be.
And that's like the fun of it though, right? Of like, what does my dog enjoy? That's kind of been the fun of it. You know, I also think that every time you get another dog, the number of dogs that you had right before felt really good, right? Like you always are like, why did I do this? You know, especially when you are in the dog industry. But like, that's been the fun of figuring it out with Brick of, okay, I think he's 9 months old now. I don't remember. He was born in February. Whatever, doesn't matter. But it's, you know, he is so different than Kemper. He doesn't like intensity like Kemper does. Kemper, he loves intensity. He loves to go. Brick is, I don't know. He's not from here. I tell people all the time, like he's just not. You met him, yeah, when you came to visit, Molly.
His nickname is 2x4. We need to rename him.
Yeah, you're the one who renamed him 2x4 because he's more shaped like a 2x4 than a brick now. Yeah, but he's just so different. So it's finding what he enjoys, while also we're going through a little bit of like a fear stage now. So I'm not like when we go out to a park and we go on a structured walk and his hackles go up, and his cool thing is that the hackles on his tail go up. So he kind of looks like a cat. It's really fun.
That's crazy.
Yeah. But it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, well, I'm not discounting this as something that you enjoy. I am now working on this as something where you're not perceiving this correctly. So as soon as we get you perceiving the situation correctly, then I'll figure out if you enjoy it or not. Mm-hmm. But that's the fun of owning a dog is who are you? What are we going to do together? But also that's the responsibility of owning a dog of who are you? What do you enjoy? And I need to be willing to make sacrifices so that I can fulfill you, this dog, not the dog I had before, not the dog that just passed away, not my friend's dog that I see on Instagram, this dog in front of me. I think that's another huge thing is that we go, well, my previous dog really liked this. Great. Well, that's not this dog.
Yeah.
You know, that's like saying my ex-wife really liked this. Great. Can you imagine? Oh my God. And like, you're the next wife. Can you imagine?
That's horrible. When you like put it in that perspective, you're like, whoa.
Yeah. You're like, that's not me though. I'm actually a whole different human. Thank you.
Right. Yeah. I feel like honestly, one of my biggest pieces of advice to people is like, if you have a really specific idea of what dog you want them to like this activity, you want them to have this energy level, you want them to like snuggles, you want them to be happy-go-lucky, go adopt a dog that was in a foster home for more than 2 weeks, like a month at least, maybe 3 months, and find that dog that fits your exact picture of what you want. Don't go get a puppy and then think you're going to mold them into what they should be or what you think they should be.
Amen.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
exactly.
I mean, especially if you have kids in the house too. If you are getting a dog and you have kids in the house, only adopt from a dog who has been in a foster home with kids. That's it. Like that's the only, like you should not be going directly to the shelter and getting a dog. You should not be going directly to a breeder and getting a dog. You should be only finding a foster home that has kids around the same age as your kids. And ideally that dog has been in that house for a little while. Especially obviously if you are new to to owning a dog, that like don't take chances with it. And obviously make sure that you educate your children, but that's the benefit of foster homes, is that you know that dog. It's not just a guessing game. And you're like, I mean, I think I talked about this in the last episode. I based way too much of my idea of who Brick was going to be on how he acted in his litter when I met him. Little did I know at that time, his entire litter were positive for parvo. So all of them were sick. So I was like, oh my God, this dog is so calm. These are the best little puppies. I get a call the next day and they're like, actually, they're all testing positive for parvo. And I'm like, okay, great. Everyone's fine. Everyone survived, obviously. But I picked him out and based it on one interaction of, okay, I need that really calm dog. And he was the puppy that sort of put himself, like he would come up and say hi, and then he would walk away. I was like, okay, he's the cool, calm, collected. He's not. And I'm never going to make him that. Like, that's fine. But I'm still in this discovery phase with him of, what do we enjoy doing together? What is something that I can do well for him? And if it's something I don't feel equipped to do, how can I learn?
Yeah, the family that adopted our one of our best chance dogs, Bruce, I thought it was so sweet because they waited until the kids were a little bit older and just understood the concept of having a dog, and decided to adopt a dog. And for from the first day that I got a hold of the parents and we started talking, initially they applied for one dog. And that dog was Marty, one of our other little ones. And they loved how Marty's super cute, and they loved Marty. They wanted to meet Marty. And at the time, we were kind of getting to know Marty still, but
Marty had an attitude problem, a
Marty
little
had
bit.
an attitude problem. He liked what he liked, and when he didn't like it, he would show that by reacting to it. And sometimes he would even try to bite. He would show teeth. He doesn't want to be touched. Sometimes he gets overstimulated. And this is a family with a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. So the kids love dogs. I mean, they love dogs. They would go around the neighborhood. They would try to ask the neighbors if they could be with their dogs.
So
I mean, they wanted a dog, So oddly enough, the day that we had Marty, I ended up taking Bruce with, because we were on the way to the vet appointment. So I'm like, you know what, Bruce, just stay in the car. Marty, let's try it out, because the dad really wanted to meet Marty. And I told him all about Marty, but they felt like they could still handle it. So when Marty came out of the car and they met the kids, he did great. I mean, I could sense that he was getting really anxious just by the touching. He behaved well, but as soon as I put him on the crate, he freaked out. Like, that's when he blew up. Like, he just got so overwhelmed. But Bruce was there, and Bruce is the perfect family dog. Like, this dog
really cool
is so calm. He can't, even lack of structure won't damage him. Like, you can have him not receive any structure and put him in the crate. He still won't freak out.
If you are Bruce's adopted family, please continue giving structure if you hear this.
But Bruce is a dog that really can handle it, and I knew the kids would be so excited for that first dog. It would be difficult to really have structure and really have boundaries with two little kids that are like over the moon about having their own dog, So the first day that they met, they decided, we had a long period of like back and forths and making sure this is the right thing. But they were like overly excited the first day, right? But Bruce, because I already knew his personality, I knew he could handle it, and I was not worried about it. I was like, all right, they're super excited, but they waited for the right dog. They picked the right dog. This is the dog that I trust. I know can handle this kind of excitement. He won't react. He goes with the flow. And now they're just super in love with him. Like, there is room, there's wiggle room for them. And that's what they needed with little kids, being really excited about their dog. They got matched with a dog that doesn't have high intensity, that doesn't need, doesn't have that high energy. Yeah. He is a good match for them. So I love when families actually go out and adopt, because you tell the rescue what your life is like. You tell us what you're looking for. And it could be a different dog than the one you applied for. But if you're open to actually being matched with a dog that's right for your family, then we're going to find that for you, because it could be a whole...
Ideally.
Yeah.
But like, there's some rescues though that I feel like we do that I'm bragging on us, but I feel like we do that well, right? Where our fosters are very honest with people of, right now, Milo, one of our current fosters, is struggling in the crate. Hopefully by the time that this episode airs, he's adopted and no longer struggling in the crate. But he, tomorrow he has a meet and greet, and I'm going to really harp on that. I think that there's a lot of rescues, though, who do take on maybe too much at one time, that they are going to downplay issues. So I think if you are somebody who really, like you said, Molly, needs a very specific or wants a very specific dog, ask the foster. Don't ask the rescue coordinator, ask the foster, and tell that foster, I really want you to be honest with me. Like, this is something that once I take this dog, I don't want to return this dog, but I really want you to be honest with me because I'm being very picky about the dog that I bring home. So ask very specific questions, and really make sure that they know it is okay to be honest with you, and really push the rescue to be honest with you, because they all have good intentions, but sometimes the goal is just to get the dog out and into a home, maybe not that specific right home. But once again, the owner also needs to have you do need to have a little bit of wiggle room, right? You do need to have, like, you can have a picture. I had a picture of what I wanted my life with Kemper to be like. Is it exactly like that? No, I didn't realize I got a dog with 2 brain cells. I'm just kidding. He's emotionally intelligent. He is not book smart. But I love the life that I have with him. I shifted, you know what I mean? But that's the fun part of figuring out what it is that you can do together with this dog for the rest of their lives.
Totally.
So we'll go a little bit into recall, because
Queen of
Molly's
recall.
like queen.
No.
Yes. Queen of recall. Oh my gosh. If you have not checked out her social media, her Instagram, it's so cool to see the videos of the adventures that they go on, and, hikes, all the things. It's so fun, but you really have to get to a solid level with your dog to have that kind of freedom, right? That's huge.
Molly, how many huskies have you trained to be off leash? Just an average.
Every husky foster I've ever had.
So a lot, right?
A lot.
Okay, so that makes you the queen of recall.
I don't know.
Sorry.
I listened to your podcast on recall, and I was like nodding I was like, yes. Like, I was like, yes, preach, Millie, preach.
Well, a lot of it I learned from you. So,
so recall. So I actually teach a recall class, which is funny because we're actually just practicing recall, but I think recall is actually so much more than that. So at the beginning of that class, I tell the story with Hank, because I think that recall is so much more about the relationship with your dog than anything else, and actually the practice of recall. So when we adopted Hank, we adopted him from Sherry Lucas's rescue, Second Chance at Love. And I told her, I was like, he's going to be an amazing puller, like sled dog. Like, he looks like he came from a racing kennel, but he didn't. He's like totally like mud off the streets of California. But anyway, so when we first adopted him, it was in the wintertime in December, I think. And we were doing a ton of ski joring where, like, they're in harnesses connected to me in a harness and pulling me on skis. So not a lot of off leash stuff.
So
like, we were doing a lot of like in harness pulling me type things, and on leash hikes and things like that. And so, but I was working with him on everything else. So I was working with him on all the basics, like crate, place, thresholds, on leash, like all the things, right? But I didn't really ever practice recall with him. And when it came time for us to, I was like, okay, I feel like our relationship is on a point where he can maybe go off leash, like backcountry skiing with us. And I've been doing like like leash drills basically with him at this point. And so I took him to the park, and I was like, oh my gosh, I haven't practiced recall once with this dog. Like, I don't know if he's just going to totally blow me off, right? So I always transition them by like dragging the leash. Like, I have a long, I hate odd numbers, by the way. So I normally actually get 14 feet long lines versus 15 feet.
I have 12 because of that.
I was like,
my long leads are 12.
Yeah. Awesome. And so you get me. So my 14-foot long line is dragging, right? And that's kind of the transition. Like, I'm never just going to like take the leash off and be like, well, let's see how this goes. Like, I always will hold the handle of the leash and let it drag, and then I'll eventually drop it and let it drag all the way. So I was out at the park doing some recall practice with him, and I like let him get on a scent on a bush and backed up, and he just turned around instantly. Like, I didn't say a word. Like, he was just like recalling without me recalling him. Like, he was already off leash trained. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this just like proves even further, like the relationship that I have with this dog matters so much more than me practicing recall for 5 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever a day. Like if you don't do all the little things in the beginning to build that relationship, the dog's not going to recall to you. If you're
Yeah.
irrelevant, the dog's not going to recall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I think that that's crazy. I mean, it would be like if I went to a park with a friend and I just started walking away and my friend didn't even notice, right? Like that's a bad relationship. That's not a bad, I mean, that's a bad friendship, you know? So recall is more just like caring about where you are and what you're doing. And there's really not a lot that I could care about more than my friend's location. If I'm in a public place, right, and I intended to go there with them, I'm not going to just keep watching the band play if my friend is wandered off, right? I mean,
Totally.
it's so much more than just trick treat, say their name, they get a treat. It's how you live with them. I mean, you can do, I mean, with Brick, I was even surprised about the recall that I have with him, but that's because I live with him on a day to day. He cares about where I go. And even in a room, like it's not, you know, he's always kind of checking in. He's not obsessive about it, but he's aware of where I am, just like my husband would be if we went out to dinner or went to a party or whatever. But I think that's the biggest thing for people's like recall command is that they come in and they're like, oh, we just need recall. We just need to teach recall. Okay. Well, it's not just anything, unfortunately. Like you could have said, we just need to teach walking on a leash, and that would be easier than what you just said to me. But yeah, I mean, I think it's so much more than that. Now, can you do it with treating, you know, treats and e-collars and all of this stuff? Absolutely. But is it meaningful? Does it become as bomb proof as it is, as it would be if you had a good relationship? I don't think so.
Right. Totally agree. And granted, like so when living in Utah and like mountainous states, like we have moose. So like moose you don't want to mess with moose. Which by the way, there's this video, I sent it to Sherry. This guy, not a smart human, walks up to this huge bull moose that's laying down, resting.
I think I've seen this video.
With his camera. And the moose stands up, takes his time. The guy moves a little bit and then the moose charges him, but just enough. Like he just puts pressure just enough. And then the guy falls to the ground, like crying. And then the moose just walks away. But it was like the perfect pressure and release video.
Yeah.
Because he was just like, I'm going to tell you just enough. Don't take another step forward. And then I'm going to be like, yeah, that was enough. Now I'm going to walk.
Yeah. You're welcome also for not going further.
For not actually trampling you. Yeah. Like they will take you out. So anyways, moose, like your recall better be really solid if your dog is off leash in Park City or any area that has a moose population. But so even though it's the relationship that matters the most, I will really proof the dogs. Like I have them on leash for quite some time. Although like Lucas, my other husky, who's very confident, and you met Lucas.
I met Lucas. Right, I worked with Lucas when I went to one of Sherry's workshops. Yeah.
Now I want to know what you think of him, because I have thoughts on what he was like pre-biking. Lucas was different.
He was so fun. He was just happy-go-lucky and just head in the clouds. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Like yeah. So with him, I actually had him off leash within just a few weeks, but he was so like the moment that I started biking with him, he was like, oh my gosh, Mom, you are the greatest thing that's ever happened to me. Like he just like his whole thing changed. Like he's less aloof now than he was before. But anyways, most dogs I have on leash for quite some time, and I'm proofing like, okay, we go out to the trail, we recall off of wildlife, obviously to safe distance. We're not disturbing wildlife, but like if they see a deer in the distance, I'm practicing recalling off of that. Like I'm practicing recalling in all of the scenarios that we would be in while we're biking, skiing, hiking, whatever it is. But like you have to practice recalling off of triggers if you want to have good recall. You can't just like I tell people, start micro recalling, like micro recall in your yard, in the house, like make it easy and just randomly throughout the day. Like I think you said in your recall podcast, like you'll just recall them on walks randomly. Like I do that.
Yeah, I'll let them get into a scent and call them off and just enforce with the leash. But the difference is that your dogs want to be with you because you know who you are, treating them as individuals, right? And you are fulfilling them for who they are as a dog, you know? And I think that that's fulfillment kind of even goes back into recall of you see them for who they are. So now you have a dog like Lucas who was really head in the clouds, right? I mean, probably even before Sherry, right? And when I first met him, he was only at Sherry's for a little bit. But as soon as you start going, you know what? I'm going to figure out what it is that you like and let's do that together. You're going to have a lot less of a hard time practicing recall because that dog's going to be like, hey, this lady does what I like. You know,
Totally.
why would I leave her? You
Right.
know, it's fun to be with her, or it feels good to be with her. It doesn't always have to be fun, but it feels
Right.
good to be with
Right.
her. And that's the thing about recall that I think so many people miss is it's not just, yes, it is drills and it has to be proofing it, but it's so much more than that. Does your dog see you as somebody who it feels good to be with?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Like, is that person safe for me? Are they advocating for me? Are they fulfilling me? Like all of the things combined into the relationship matter.
Yeah.
Well, I love that you actually teach in depth, how dog owners can be off leash, how their relationship can get to the point where you guys are going on adventures together. Like your biking videos are awesome, like the hiking and the skiing. I mean, those are so cool. How long did it take you to get to the point where you're going in these adventures and the dogs are just following you around, they're just like synced up with you?
I actually started biking with foster dogs when I was in Atlanta. Well, no, I take that back, in Alabama. So my foster's in Alabama. I would bike with them. I had a really old, crappy mountain bike at the time, but I didn't care. It was still fun. And so I started biking then. But then when we adopted our first husky in California, which is kind of what got me on the whole. I never thought I wanted a husky, by the way. This was like all my husband's fault.
Well, your husband's active too, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
He's a skier.
Yeah. He used to ski race. Now we just ski for fun, but
Okay.
he's literally a husky in body. So like if he doesn't also get fulfilled every day, he like is not himself. No, I'm not kidding. Like he truly like needs his daily. I mean, I do too. I'm active, but like he's kind of next level, like the dogs are. So when we adopted our first husky in California, we were hiking and, had them off leash hiking and like they were happy. Like they weren't, but we hadn't started really mountain biking with them yet. And I can't remember if it was me or AJ, my husband, if it was me or him that was like, we should really start mountain biking with the dogs. Like, what are we doing? Like, this would be so fun if we had, we had two huskies at the time, and Pete and Sawyer, my hound, aka Benjamin, because he looked like a little black bean when he was a puppy. But anyways, so once we started biking with them, it was just like a switch went off. Like they changed. Like they were just more in tune with us in a way that I really can't describe. And I think it's what you were saying. Like they were just like, yeah, you guys are way cooler now. Like,
yeah, you see me.
Like you get me.
Yeah.
It was just different. And so after that, we started with those two huskies biking. So got them dialed biking and everything is the same. So like when I'm hiking and I'm moving, the dogs are following me. And I'm really strict about this because of biking and skiing. So a lot of people are like, yeah, let your dog, have adventure time while you're moving. That's fine if all you're doing is hiking. But like, because we're biking and skiing and there's a big safety component to that, I want the dogs following behind us where they can see where I'm going and we don't run them over with the ski or the bike or other people hit them with the bike. So when I'm hiking, I call it like a structured sandwich where I let them have their potty in the beginning before we leave. So I'm like, okay, check that box. Everybody pottied. Now, when I'm moving, you're following loosely, like at my side or behind me. And I don't care if they're in prey drive and sniffing around, like as long as they're aware of where I am and loosely following, fine. And then in the middle, when we reach like the top of the hike or top of the bike ride or whatever, I'm like, okay, go. And I know people say like, don't use okay as your release word. I do. I'm guilty. Whatever. I'm like, okay, go. And so they'll go run around and then I recall them back and then we hike or bike down the same way that we came up.
So when you say like, okay, go, you're stationary, I'm assuming?
I am staying. I'm like a post or like, I'm getting water or my own pee break, like whatever.
Okay.
Like I'm not moving anymore on the trail.
Okay.
And they can kind of go obviously within eyesight. Like I almost have like an invisible fence line in my mind, right? Where like, if they start to go outside of that, I'm like, hey, Brooks, like come back this way. If I say Brooks come, it's like come all the way. But Brooks is like loosely just like make your way back into the like area. But yeah, so we started with the 2 Huskies. Once they all got dialed with hiking like that, biking became easy because they already knew the drill. Like when we're moving, we follow at the hip line. So it actually wasn't that hard to get our dogs to bike and ski and follow us in that way because it's just so consistent. And I think the consistency is just the most fair thing to do. Like having mixed rules all the time is confusing for the dog.
Yeah. So when you hike, you still only ask your dog, like your dogs cannot pass you because you are going to, you're going to bike with them. You're going to ski with them. And so then that would be confusing for them. That makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And like, granted, they still get plenty of like running around and sniffing time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm sure like a lot of people wish their dogs would be behind them while they're hiking or at least next to them while they're hiking. I mean, I think a lot of people are like, it would be great if my dog came back when I called them. Having them walk behind me loosely would be even better. Right. But I think that's very cool that you kind of put those two things together of, well, I can't ask them when I'm just walking on this trail that now they can go in front of me, but all of a sudden now when we're doing this or this, it's, there's more structure. I think a lot of people would be like, that's a fair ask. But for you, you're like, it's easier if we just keep it all the same. Why would I let him go out in front of me if the next day I'm going to use a different thing and ask something different?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And it's not like they're not getting like, if you look at Lucas as he's behind me, he is nose to the freaking ground. Like he is totally in prey drive. It's not like he's packed in with me walking like militantly. Like, no, I don't care about that. I just care that they are safe and I am aware of where they are and they are aware of where I am. And that we're not. And there's a ton of bikers in Park City too. So like if you're hiking and your dog is 30 yards ahead of you, they might get hit by a biker.
That's true. Like, you should be the first one to like cross the corners or, you know what I mean? Cause that makes a lot of sense. A lot of sense, especially if there's like a moose around a corner, right?
Literally read my mind. I was like, I don't want my dog to see the moose first. No.
Yeah.
That's awesome though, that you actually have courses for that, right? To bike with your dog and to start with you and like get into your courses. They just go through your Instagram.
So I offer group classes. I do have existing clients in my group classes and new clients too. So I'm open with that. I do a consultation call before every group class just to make sure people know what they're getting into and that we're kind of all on the same page. But my website is listed on my Instagram, so they can go.
I really want to have Molly come out and teach like a recall class to all my clients. I just would love that. Let's do like a collaboration of like a little where you come, because you come down for holidays anyway. So we might as well do something.
I know you asked about honored, but also we teach recall the same way.
So. I know, but I want to see you do it. I want to learn from you. She said last time she messaged me, and because I posted the thing about Milo, whoever wants to work in my large group, and she was like, "Are you having a large group in a couple of weeks? Because I'll come work Milo." And I was like, "I would love that." I almost like created a large group for when you come down so that you could work Milo.
No, I will be there for a week. Just like I will come.
All right, we'll do something. I'll think about something. I would love that. Okay. Would love that.
Awesome. And so one of the last questions that we have for you here, these are our questions. Who are some of your mentors?
So I feel like I have a lot of mentors. Like Millie is a mentor. Like yes. Like no. So my definition of a mentor is anybody that you can learn from. I think that traditionally when people think of a mentor, they think of somebody that has way more experience than them or somebody that's like so much bigger than what they are, right? And I just don't feel that way. I feel like I can learn so many things from so many different people. And maybe I don't take away everything that person's saying, but I might take away bits and pieces. And I think that having an open mind is just being humble is the way to go about it. But awesome. I think one of my biggest mentors is obviously Sherry Lucas. She is just such a phenomenal human coach, but also dog trainer.
Truly.
And has been there for me through so much. Like 2 years ago when I went to her train the trainer, I remember day when I was bawling, crying because she basically was like, you need to have all the confidence in the world. Like, period. Like, you're a phenomenal trainer. What are you thinking in your head? And I just didn't have that confidence to see it. And she was the only person that ever did that for me.
Yeah.
And I mentored, and chatted with a lot of other trainers, but she was the only one that pulled me aside and was like, you are amazing and you need to be confident in that. And it changed everything for me.
Yeah, no, Sherry saved my entire team. Like we were really struggling. And then I took the trainers, last January, I feel like, to to learn to lead. It was just a weekend. And it was, still you can ask Connor, Jillian, or Easton. It was a life-changing experience for us because it was just the four of us. It was, we were all really struggling with our own things, our own confidence level. We had just opened up the center. Easton was kind of half in, half out because she also works in the film industry. And she didn't have the confidence. Connor and Jill were still new in this too. I was struggling with the idea of, oh my God, I'm responsible for all of these people and their livelihood and this, and the rent here. Right. And we left that and we came back almost whole as a team because of Sherry, because of the confidence level that she gave not only my trainers, but me, and choosing, like, the fact that throughout that weekend, Sherry threatened to steal all three of my trainers. I was like, okay, I did a good thing. I chose really three good trainers, which I knew that, but like, that's a compliment to me of like, totally. Okay, Sherry Lucas wants to steal all three of my trainers. First of all, no, Sherry. And I told her I would fight her. But it was still, it meant so much to them. It meant so much to me, but she is an incredible mentor for, I feel like a lot of people, both for us as humans, but also us as dog trainers too.
Totally. Yeah.
Awesome.
And then the other person that I have to give credit for, because I've learned so much from her, is also Sam from Pack Life LA. She's a really dear, good friend, but she's just a phenomenal human and trainer, and love her so much. So
she's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we have some listener questions too for Molly, and I'll go with the first one. When can we all come to Utah to learn from you? And this is from Easton, from your Image K9.
Easton is very upset that she did not meet you when you were down here that one weekend.
So I was messaging with Easton because she's like, okay, my first question is, where are all of your overalls from? And so I feel like I let Easton down by not wearing overalls today. But
it's a very Easton question. Yes.
Yeah. Which I have overalls for different things. So I'm sure she got way more information than she was planning to get.
I'm sure she's already bought one of each.
But so we are currently building our new place outside of Park City where we can have our horses and dogs together on our property out there. It's the property that I hike all of my camp dogs on. So it's on my Instagram quite frequently, but that's where we're building. In theory, we should be done building like next summer, fall, hopefully. So then would be an awesome time. Like, you guys can come ride the horses and do all the activities.
I think Sarah messaged you too, right? About that. I think Sarah messaged you, my director, who she doesn't do that. And so if you've got Sarah on your team, I'm impressed.
I was like, I think she did. Yes.
Yeah, no, Sarah's really big into horses too. So she was like, can we just go out there and work dogs and horses? I'm like, I'm pretty sure Molly would let us do that. I'm pretty sure.
100%. Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So another question here. How does a dog owner build a strong relationship with their dog? This is from Faith from Texas.
So I'm probably going to sound like a broken record, I think. But I think first, it goes down to what we were saying earlier, understanding who your dog is, like understanding their confidence level too, right? Because like Brooks, who's my shepherd, who I use as an example all the time, because when I first adopted her, had major stranger danger. Like first time we brought her back from the shelter, she like blew up in the car at a person walking by. And I was like, okay, like, this is what we're in for. Got it. But she's a really sensitive dog. Like, you can look at her the wrong way and Sarah McLachlan starts playing through the ceiling. Like she's just like very sensitive. So understanding like your dog's confidence level or pack position is really helpful to be like, okay, I have a super sensitive, insecure dog. I need to give this dog more information, more guidance more often than I would Lucas, my really confident dog. So I think part of it is that's like kind of step number one for me is, who is your dog and what do they need from you? And then the second part is obviously fulfillment, like we've been talking about on here today. And then I think structure, giving your dog expectations. I think one of the most unfair things we can do for our dogs is give poor expectations or none at all, and just expect them to like exist in our house the way that we want them to without ever setting them up for success. So it's really like understanding your dog fulfillment structure, setting expectations, and being fair and being somebody that they trust. And I know I'm
1,000% agree.
simplifying that massively, and that could be a whole podcast in itself. But
I mean, on the surface, it is simple. It's just a matter of whether or not you're willing to do the work and kind of get curious about who your dog is.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a quote that I actually saw this morning. I'm totally blanking on the guy's name who said it, but he was a gymnast, Olympic gymnast. And he said, the fulfillment is in the journey. And I was just like, I love that.
I love that. Yeah.
Because it's so true. Like,
Yeah.
I would not have the fulfilling relationship that I have with my personal dogs, or my clients wouldn't have the relationship that they have with their dogs if they didn't put in the work to build that from scratch. So,
yeah. 1,000%. I mean, I tell people all the time, even on the very surface, there are so many dogs that their reactivity brought me, I mean, Andreia is one of them, right? Like Bubbles' reactivity created this podcast, created the Best Chance program, right? And also created this amazing relationship. Bubbles is now one of, I think, the easier dogs, right? Like, so on top of it is fulfilling for that relationship. I mean, there are a lot of reactive dogs. Easton is one of them. Her reactive dog brought me Easton. So there's a lot of things that the journey is sort of kind of the point, that's where you get curious and you figure out who this dog is and then what can we build from here. And a lot of times for me, it just feels like there's a lot of humans that I meet through these reactive dogs because people are willing to go that extra mile, which is awesome. I feel like I got lucky with that.
yeah.
Awesome. Well, we covered a lot today in this episode, and it's so awesome to have you here, Molly, with us. You are awesome to follow. I love your content. It's so inspiring. I think it is inspiring for a lot of dog owners. It just gives you more motivation. It helps you see what it could be, right? If you really work with your dog, if you really create that relationship, you can have all these amazing adventures with your dog. And it all starts with understanding your dog, like we talked about at first. Starting the podcast and ending it with that is really recognizing your dog for who they are and realizing what they need and then offering that for them. So I love that Millie is really all about that, and you are too. And that really aligns with everything that we talked about in the podcast so far. So I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us today, even going so far to purchase your own microphone.
100%.
100% all the way.
This is
I'm also, I would just say, like, I would work for Millie in a heartbeat. Like,
stop it.
No,
I'm going to start crying.
I'm serious.
I haven't cried on this podcast yet. Stop.
Like, I am equally obsessed and fangirling over Millie and her entire team and you and everything you're doing. So trust me. Yes, the love is very mutual.
Oh my God. I'm going to start crying.
Molly, can you share with us, just so we can end it with this, can you share your Instagram, your website, how people, you said they can go on your website and sign up for the courses, and the next course that you have going on, like any kind of, trainings that you have coming up that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Pete's Adventure Pack, named after my original dog, Pete. I think there was a time period where everybody thought I was named Pete, but now we've kind of cleared that up. My name is Molly. My dog's name was Pete. And my website is petesadventurepack.com. And I think the next thing that I have coming up that's big, I'm actually launching an online membership program called the Adventure Dog Channel that will have everything adventure dog related, from the basics to hiking, biking, skiing, all the things, even horseback riding stuff. So camping, climbing.
I want to be the first customer, please.
This is
Please.
I would be so honored. And we're going to do group virtuals 4 times a month.
That's awesome.
So that's what it will look like, and that will be announced soon. But group classes are tough in the winter. I would do them. People, I feel like most people were like, "Hey, Molly, let's like revisit those in the spring."
Come down to Atlanta. Do your group classes down here. We can do joint group classes down here, because it was 80 degrees at our last large group last Sunday. So it doesn't get cold here, apparently.
That's wild. It's like 20 something degrees outside.
Yeah, it was really hot. It's really hot. I wore a sweatshirt.
All right. Well, Millie, do you want to add anything else?
No, everyone just go follow Molly. So then that way when she announces that the Adventure Channel is up, we can all go join. But yeah, I think thank you for coming on, being our first like guest outside of our team. You were kind of a nice guinea pig, which is great because I felt comfortable with you. So thank you for coming on and joining, and hopefully we can have you back on eventually. Do you want to come back on?
Oh my
Answer
gosh,
me right now on the podcast.
Yes,
Put her
of
on the
course.
spot, really.
Yes, I feel like I just
She
got
would be like,
proposed to.
Actually, no, I don't.
Yeah, how awkward. Like Andrea would cut that part out and she would voice over yes in your voice.
No,
but yeah,
of course.
Eventually I'd love to have you come back on. We can come up with like a different topic or even the same one. I don't care. And seriously, I would love, I know my clients would love to have you come out and we could all go on like here's the thing though. If you come over here and you meet Easton, you cannot steal her from me, even though she's probably going to jump in your bag to go back to Utah with you. You have to make her stay here with me. It's very important that you do that. But I love what you do because you take it even that step further. I work on the reactivity, I work on the relationship, and then, you do that extra mile of, now look at what we can do. Now that we've taken care of this, I would love to have you come down and we could do something together. I think it would be awesome.
I would love that so much. That'd be great.
And
awesome. By the PS, I am so honored that I'm the first person that you guys had on here. Thank you.
Oh yeah. When I saw that you signed up, I was like, Molly's going to be the first one. Molly's first one, please.
Thank you.
Millie was like, I'm so excited. Molly signed up to be part of the podcast.
I've been telling everyone, I was like, Molly's nervous. Why is Molly? I'm nervous. Why is Molly nervous?
I bought a microphone. I was so nervous. I didn't live up to the standard.
Well, I'm so glad that this was such a great episode. I can't wait until we actually air it out. So thank you so much for joining us today, Molly. And if you guys have any questions for us, you can email us at info@thinklikeadogpodcast.com. You can also go to Mirror Image K9 and fill out the question form. So thank you so much for joining us. And until next time.
Practice makes progress. Sorry, I forgot my own tagline. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at Think Like a Dog Podcast and follow at Mirror Image K9 for training tips. If you have any questions, please reach out to us via email at info@thinklikeadogpodcast.com.